ለመማር ወደ ትምህርት ተቋም መሄድ ግድ አይደለም። ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ
ራሳችሁን ከኮሮና ቫይረስ ወረርሽኝ እየጠበቃችሁ በቤታችሁ ወይም በተመቻችሁ ቦታ በኢንተርኔት አማካኝነት በኦንላይን ትምህርታችሁን መከታተል ትችላላችሁ።
ካናዳ ከሚገኘው ኢንተርናሽናል ኤር ትራንስፖርት አሶሲዬሽን አያታና ከእንግሊዙ ኢንስቲትዩት ኦፍ ኮመርሻል ማኔጅመንት ICM ጋር በመተባበር የሚሰጡ ትምህርቶችን ተከታትላችሁ በ6 ወር ጊዜ በዓለም አቀፍ ደረጃ ተቀባይነት ያለውን የስልጠና ማስረጃ ባለቤት መሆን ይቻላል።
ልምድ ባላቸው መምህራን እየተማራችሁ ጥያቄና መልስ የክፍል ስራዎች ፈተና መፈተን ክፍል ውስጥ እንዳላችሁት አይነት በኦንላይን ባላችሁበት ቦታ ከናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ
የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ
So our assignment topic was accident risk factor and analysis from insurance perspective. No, so my presentation outlines introduction, factor of accident risk, analysis of accident risk from insurance perspective, how insurance companies reduced accident risk, and its conclusion. So in the introduction part, I just define only the accident, what I mean by accident is. So as using from the definition, accident is unforeseen and unplanned event, no? So it's an unfortunate event, no, resulting especially from carelessness or ignorance. It can be from carelessness or ignorance. So the occurrence of such an event may or may not have unrecognized or unaddressed risk contributing to its cause. No. So when you define accidents, risk means it's a likelihood or a probability and severity of harmful incidents. No. So the relationship between this accident and risks are defined here. So when you look at factor of accident risks, there are so many factors, but we can be grouped these factors into 5 or 6 scenarios: human factor or personal error, malfunction or failure of aircraft structure, engine or other system, deficit maintenance, hazardous environment involving weather, volcanic ash, birds, etc., air traffic management error, and a combination of this one can be a factor of accident risks. When you say human factor or personal error, it can be from memory lapse or intention or distraction, lack of competence and experience, etc. can be human factor. Just this is a highlight, not in a detail. So when you say memory lapse, people maybe forgotten things or forgotten the step or the process or the safety measure. Maybe in the factory, they should wear something shoe for slippery areas, but they are not keeping that one. Because of that, accident will occur. The second one is malfunction or failure of aircraft structure, engine or other system. So the last MAX airplane is a good example for this one. So defective design, unsafe aircraft, overstated frame, an aircraft structural failure, something like that is concluded in this failure of aircraft structure. So deficient maintenance. So maintenance should be the main factor to reduce risks, but the main factor also to occur an accident. When you say deficient maintenance, for example, if you drive a car, we should make a maintenance within some service period, otherwise it's also an accident for that one. So it may also cause major accidents, directly triggering unwanted event, and there is a need to prevent maintenance related cause of major accidents. So in recent years, attention is given for the organizational technical issue and human cause of accidents. The third one is hazardous environment involving weather, volcanic ash, etc. So there are two types here, natural hazard and human-produced hazard. In natural hazard, it can be earthquake, volcanic eruption, flood, storm, tempest, and like that. Human-produced hazard is mainly related to like pollution, when you from leakage from the factory, air pollution from the vehicle when you drive, water and soil, contamination of food also included here. The other one is air traffic management errors. So this one also an error, defined action or incidents by air traffic controller that lead to deviation from organizational or air traffic controller intention or expectation. Unmanaged or mismanaged error frequently leads to undesired status. So any combination of the above also a factor of the accident risks. This is the highlight. So how to analyze accident risks? So in this case, we just answer WH questions. It's a structured process for identifying what happened, how and why it happened, what can be done to reduce the risk of recurrence and make care safer, and what was learned. It carried out in order to determine cause of accident, so prevent further accidents of similar kind. So we should analyze the cause for the analysis of accident. So it's part of accident investigation or incident investigation. So we should know what it happened, how it will be, how and why it happened, and what we should do to reduce these risks. So when you come to accident risk from insurance perspective, insurance accident risk have also similar meaning, factor in the analysis to the general insurance. No difference at all. However, there are different insurance policies presented for accident risk for both general life insurance scenarios. So let us look at policies from each division. As I said, there are two types of policies, accident for the general and life. When you say general, it can be property or liability. So for the long-term insurance, what is accidental life insurance policy covers? Accidental death and disablement. Insurance is usually rider to health insurance or life insurance policy. This is a definition, or what it covered for insurance. The rider covered unintentional. If it is intentional, it is not accident, it is not covered. So unintentional death or disablement of the insured. Insurance companies defined accidental death an event that strictly occurs as a result of accident. So in order to be accident, it should be unintentional. If someone dies with suicide, it is not covered because it's not accident, it's intentional. When you come to general insurance, we can see in two ways, in liability and property insurance. In few cases, accident is defined the term within a policy. In some policy, accidents are defined. In some other insurance policy, accidents are not defined. In most cases, however, common law becomes the determinant of what is or what is not an accident for the purpose of triggering coverage. When you come to boiler or machinery breakdown insurance, accident by itself is defined in the policy. Accident mean in the policy sudden and accidental equipment breakdown that cause damage to equipment and necessitate repair for replacement. So if it is not accidental and sudden, the policy will not provide cover for that policy. So when you say accidental, it's unintentional. It's not deliberate act. Boiler and machinery breakdown coverage applies to the loss or damage resulting from an accident or an accident to covered object. That covered object should be face some accidents. Accident risk from liability insurance. In older forms of liability insurance policy, accident was not defined. But in the currently, insurance modern policies define what accident means in the policy and state everything in the policy also. That applies on the occurrence which defined to mean an accident, including continuous or repeated exposure to substantially the same general harmful conditions. So how insurance companies reduce accident risks? The best thing is loss control measure. So the loss control involves identifying risks. First, they should identify the risk and accompanied by voluntary or required action to a policyholder should undertake to reduce risks. So policyholder may benefit from loss control program. They can get reduced premium, and the company also benefited by reducing its claim payout. So risk control is the best method for managing accident risk, usually least expensive. Accident risk in insurance have the same outline. This is a conclusion with the general environment, covers unintentional and sudden events or occurrences for both life and general insurance. The factor or cause of accident risk in insurance is the same as in the general insurance: human factor, personal error, malfunction or failure of aircrafts, engine or other system, deficit maintenance. However, the above stated general factors vary from one class to the other depending on the nature and types of insurance. So this is my reference, what I'm using to prepare this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sablongil. It's exactly, you took 10 minutes. I wonder how do you manage your time? That means you have a good management skill. And Sablongil, you give us a good introduction about accident risk, its definition, its factors, and its consideration from the insurance perspective, especially taking into account different insurance policies and means of entertaining such types of risk. Thank you so much, and let me give you your friends, your classmates, Mr. Driva and Mesai. Still the other students, they are not joining us. So Mesai and Mr. Driva, do you have any question to Sabra Wengil?
No, I don't have a question, but it's a comment, I think.
All right, all right.
Yeah, she tries to touch every question what you have given as an assignment. She tries to first define what accident mean, and she also tries to elaborate what factors for accidents, and also she tries to how to analyze the accidental risk, especially on insurance perspectives. But I think on the factors, or accident risks have many factors, but she tries to focus on aircraft accidents like that, I think. That's also our problem. There are many other types of accidents in this world. So I think she tries to focus on aircrafts. I think that's better because the question by itself is more general.
Yeah.
So it's good.
That's good. Thank you so much. Mr. Deriva, do you have anything to say about her? Question, suggestion?
I have no question for the instance. The way she expressed is good. Even she try to express every accident in the insurance. From air to boiler from health insurance, whatever insurance is there, she try to express in this short time is good, but the way she present is nice for me.
Thank you, Mr. Deriva. Sablawangil, I just see some good things in your presentation. And I really wonder, you present your literature, your citation, which is not common in students' presentations. By the way, most of the time, the students, they just only present. They don't want to show their sources. So I really appreciate because you cite your sources. Because different sources may have different information about accident risk and its management. So as a strength, I took a lot of things, and I do have some, maybe one or two questions. The first thing
Okay.
is how insurance. To what extent insurance? Insurance consider different types of risks, and one of the most important risks in the insurance is accident risk. So, how easy or how difficult to really evaluate accident risk, and how what shows your experience in providing indemnification for risks related to accident? Because you guys who are working in the insurance area, so I do believe that you have better understanding, far better understanding than me. So my question is, how easy or how difficult to really evaluate accident risk, and what types of experience your organization have to indemnify accident-related risk?
Okay, thank you.
One question. One question. Let me add
Okay.
another question. Another question is, what is the most common practice to manage accident risk? Or what are the most important? I'm asking you from your experience, not from your
Yes.
All right. Okay, this is your time.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Before I go to your question, I just want to respond to Masai comments. So I'm not mentioning only the aeroplane crash accidents. When you look at this PowerPoint, the major factor cause of accident can be the aeroplane is one factor. This is human factor. This personal error. From that one, it can be memory lapse, forgetting, intentional, lack of experience or competence. The other is malfunction or failure of aircraft structure. This is deficient maintenance, not properly maintain our property or vehicle. That is also cause of an accident. Hazardous environment. It's also divided into two: natural hazard and human produced hazard. This is also another factor. Air traffic management error is also another factor. It's also related with the human factor also. So any combination of the above. So I almost mentioned 5 factors categorized in different scenarios. So you maybe lose this PowerPoint. So when I come to your question, the insurance company, it's very difficult to identify the risks in the insurance company. There are also intentions, not incidental. Intentionally, people's or companies do something which is bad to get more benefit. So the principle of insurance is to put the injured person in the same financial position, not to provide additional benefit. So for replacement, or if it is maintainable, it's maintained. If it is needs replacement, the companies need to replacement on the previous position, not to provide betterment. So in this regard, it's very difficult to identify accident risks. Some are intentional. So we need survey. There are post-risk survey and pre-risk survey and post-risk survey. In this case, companies made a pre-risk survey because insured for the property. What I mean for the property. So they are requesting a pre-risk survey. And also after loss, there is a post-risk survey. So by considering these things, companies to analyze and identify what accident is in that property. So when you come to life, there are lots of documents are required, including death certificate, or how the insured is die, who is the beneficiary, if that is intentional. As I told you earlier, it's not covered the suicide. So if the one made a suicide, it's not an intentional. So it's not covered also in the life company. So for the companies evaluating whether the risk is prudent, unintentional or not unintentional, it's very difficult. That's why people are always argue with the insurance companies. Even when their vehicle made an accident, when they come to insurance, they need to get the previous damage also maintained by the insurance company, which is not logical. So the accident will cover only the incidents at that moment only, not the previous accident or the previous damage by maintained with this accident. So it's very, as I told you, it's very difficult to evaluate accident risks, and the company made indemnification based on this analysis. If the company believes that this accident is unintentional or with the insured peril or as per the agreed terms, companies also pay indemnification based on the policy terms and condition. If the policy terms are covered, that incidents, it is covered. If it is not covered in that incident, it will be rejected. And lots of cases went to the court and argue between insurance companies and the insured. And most of people say that, by the way, insurance is a public money. It's not a profitable and put someone in the pocket like the bank. Banks have to transact lots of money and put that money in the pocket. But in insurance, it's not possible to make that one. It's a public fund, it's a public money. So insurance should be properly manage that money. Otherwise, if insurance companies pays each and everything without any identification of risks, so the outcome will be a loss also. So I'm not sure whether I answer your question or not. Shall I go to the next one? አይሰማም ዶክተር።
ተመልሶልኛል ሰብሎንጌ፣ በጣም ነው የማመሰግነው። It's good. Yes, you have tried your best and I satisfied with the response.
Okay, manage, you mean also asking manage accident risks?
How do you manage the most important practice that the organization used to manage accident risk?
So all insurance companies do have accidents department. This department should be established each and every insurance companies by the order of National Bank of Ethiopia. The National Bank already have a directive. All insurance companies should have risk department. So are this or risk departments works properly? It's also my doubt. They are not analyzing properly risks in the insurance. So the management of risk in insurance companies more of traditional, not on the systematic or scientific way. So even determining grade or something like that, it comes from previous EIC, and each insurance companies copy from that one and include their input, and it continues like that. And only just like they are doing an audit. So to manage accident risks, there is no as such scientific way in the insurance companies, but there is insurance department, all insurance company, because it's a regulation from the Governor National Bank of Ethiopia.
All right, thank you so much, Sablonge. That was a very good lesson. So,
accidental risk, introduction to accidental risk. Accidental risk is an undesired and unplanned event which result to an injury or death or damage to property or environment. Accidental risk. For instance, for instance, a car crash that is covered about 60 to 70% of our insurance work in Ethiopia. That is why I try to present the car crash as example. The car crash may cause to property damage and injured or death of passengers, drivers, and pedestrians. If this accident is happened, it causes this all damage. As we know, the accident is unintentional. As we know, an accident is an intentional incident that results in unwanted consequence. I try to explain that accident, and I will also main factor for accident risk. Accident risk factor are any attributes or character or exposure of an individual that increases the likelihood of developing a damage or properties in the death or injury. Now, for the second time, my example is for car crash. The risk factor for car crash are accident. Car crash accident is a human factor, especially the drivers. And the road condition, the second one. The third one is the vehicle inherent situation. The vehicle have an inherent situation to cause the risk. In our country case, most of the time, in our country case, the driver is the most contributory for the risk factor. We express these three main factors in the car accident, especially in our country. Then the human factor or driver has a many hazard to be identified. Also, the human factor, the main factor is the human or driver, and it is so many situations in that context. Lack of driver can check the vehicle before put into operation. The second, the driver has no efficient training for a specific vehicle which he has driving. Have to get efficient training for specific vehicle he drive. And the third one is the driving license he hold has not be passed through legal process for getting license. When he getting license, he has to pass through the process. We know unethical conditions there in a license holding in our country. That is one factor in under this main factor. The second main factor is the road condition have to be identified for hazard exposure. The road has hill in the bump that could decrease the control on a vehicle and may cause accident. The second, the road slope that is not properly built may be cause the vehicle overturning accident. This is slope when the road is built, and if it's not improper, it causes the overturning and the other accidents for the vehicle. The road has a cross, as we know, a cross on the road everywhere, which joins the different way to cause the vehicle collision accident. The third main factor is that the vehicle inherent condition. The vehicle inherent condition is that the physical condition, as we know, age of the vehicle may exposed. The age of the vehicle may exposed to accident due to it couldn't get the sufficient spare part for repair, because due to this old, the spare part is out of phase, and they modified some spare parts in the condition of the vehicle is deteriorated and easily cause the accident. Lack of periodic maintenance of the vehicle. This periodic maintenance is very important. Unless otherwise our vehicle may cause the mechanical failure. That mechanical failure may lead to accident. The third case is the make of the vehicle reliability to control it is speed as per load condition. The make of the vehicle is very important in our case. Different makes, China make, other. The reliability of that case is when it is come to as a new to our country, it causes different accident until the drivers and all the maintenance or the maintenance garage have to familiar for that vehicle. This all is the under main factor. I try to identify this hazardous. Furthermore, performance measure we try to the third one is analysis of the accident risk. Now, the first task is to identify the overall system performance of measures for a personal safety point of view. The objective would be course to be avoid accident, injuries, and the fatalities. So from this, we could formulate performance measure related to the occurrence of an accident event, then the number of injuries and the number of fatalities have to be decreased. Furthermore, performance measure related to the ability of the safety bearers to prevent escalation and reduce the consequence of the hazard situation would be informative performance measures. So to simplify the analysis, we focus on the occurrence of fatal accident. Next we develop a deterministic model of the system. To analyze the model system, we use two approach. That is a classical risk analysis and the base analysis approach, and we can characterize the measure could be done on the likelihood and the consequence, and we will prioritize according to the measurement results. That means if we go like this, and if we get from the road authority condition some background data, and we can analyze the car accident, how much fatality accident is happened, and how much days is happened, how much vehicle is damaged or totaled, whatever we can analyze it by taking that, and we can identify the vehicle. Especially we know these vehicles by pre-risk evaluation. Pre-risk evaluation from their age, from their model, we know their condition in our country, and we can identify for the insurance purpose. And even a personal is have to do this all steps, and maybe it could be risk-free. Risk minimizing, not risk-free. Risk minimization is done.
Mr. Deriba, I don't know how many slides you left. You have only 1 minute almost, so try to wind up your presentation within 1 minute. 2 minutes, okay, maximum. 2 minutes.
It is not. I'm unfinished. I'm on the last, but that. Especially, I focus on the car accident, because most of our country's accident is caused by vehicles, and most of the insurance premium is collected from the vehicle. That is why I am concentrated on that. We can analyze this accident pre-risk. We can make a pre-risk condition for inspecting the vehicle in what condition, in what age, in what type of model, and we can identify, and we recommend it for the insurance after risk, we can evaluating their price and their accident. And in the claim department also, there is a risk investigators which can investigate with a policeman from the government, and they get the cause of the accident and say like that. And I'm wind up on this. It is
Mr. Deriba,
yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. And in addition to the knowledge added by Sabla, you give us some additional insight about accident risk, and especially you go rigorously by taking example the car accident, which is the most important accident, which takes many of lives and damage of properties. I wonder and I appreciate taking this an example, specific example. And the other good, the other good things I owned or I acquired for your presentation is you try to link the concept of risk analysis, the concept of accident risk, in what we have discussed yesterday, right? You try to see how to evaluate accident risk from the unifying principles, right? I would like to appreciate you refer, right? We learned yesterday and incorporated in presentation today. That's the big thing, right? That's the big thing. Thank you so much, and let me invite your friend if they do have some questions and suggestions for your presentation. And after that, I may have two questions. So let us invite your classmates if they do have concern on your presentation. So first, let me invite.
I think he made a very nice presentation, especially with the motor accidents. As he told us, it's more than 50% to 60% of premium of insurance companies collected from this business. So this is a very hazardous class of business and unprofitable business for insurances also. So major accidents is around this area. As he told us, there are post-risk and pre-risk surveys, and that's also lots of jargon in it. So he properly mentioned that one, and I'm happy with his presentation, but I don't have any question for that one.
Good, great, thank you. Masai?
Yes, Doctor. I have suggestions, what you have given to him. He tries to just connect what you have discussed before with our assignment. That's good, and also he can try to manage his time on this presentation. But my question is for both you, our instructor, and for him too. I'm not clear on the risk analysis, especially on insurances. I confused on this. I think on insurance companies, in my experience, I am not working on insurance companies, but in my experience, insurance companies mostly try to analyze accident already, an accident what's already happened on the car or any properties or any thing what they already cover. They try to analyze the accident and also the causes, the factors, and also the evaluate what type of damage happened on the car or any properties. My question is just ምንድነው የኢንሹራንስ ካምፓኒዎች ብዙ ጊዜ የሚያደርጉት ኦልሬዲ በአደጋው ባጋጠመ ጊዜ አናላይዝ ያደርጋሉ ማለት ለመክፈል እንደገና ደግሞ መጀመሪያ አናላይዝ የሚያደርጉት ፕሪሚየሙን ለማውጣት ነው our previous discussion እኔ እንደገባኝ ሪስክ አናሊሲስ ፕሮሰሶች አሉት አይደንቲፋይ ሪስክ አለ አናላይዝ እናደርግ አሰስ እናደርጋለን ሪስኩን and then the third step is mitigating risk ነው እና ይሄንኛው ፕሮሰስ አናላይዝ እናደርግ already happen ያደረገ ላይ እንዴት ነው ሚቲጌት ልናደርግ የምንችለው already happen አድርጓል እና I think እኔ እንደሚመስለኝ ሪስክ አናሊሲስ ብለን ስንል ከሪስክ ማኔጅመንት ኮንሰፕት አንፃር ስንመለከተው already ላልደረሰ ለወደፊት ሊደርስ የሚችል either avoid ለማድረግ or mitigate ለማድረግ or transfer ለማድረግ ነው እኔ እንደገባኝና ይሄ የሁለቱ ኮንሰፕቶች ሚስተር ድሪባ ካላቸው ኤክስፒሪየንስ እና ዶክተር ደግሞ ካለው አጠቃላይ የሪስክ አናሊሲስ ትምህርታችን አንፃር ሁለቱ እኔ ቢለይልኝ ግልጽ ስላልሆነልኝ ነው
Mr. Riba, it is your time to reflect the questions.
Okay. Masai, there is a ምንድነው risk according to አሁን የሞተር ቬሂክሉን ነው እንግዲህ ምሳሌ የሚያደርግልኝ ብዙ ሌሎችም ስላሉ እነሱ ሳንገባ የሞተር ቬሂክሉን ብቻ ብናወጣ ከመግባቱ በፊት we have to do ምንድነው hazard physical hazard ምን ይመስላል physical ማለት መኪናውን ነው እንግዲህ ሌላውን አይደለም አሁን እኔ ጄኔራል ያለውን አንድ መኪና አደጋ ቢፈጠር ምን ብናስከትላል በምን ይመጣል የሚለውን ነገር ነው ቅድም እንትን አደረግነው አሁን መኪናውን ብቻ ስናስገባ ወደ ኢንሹራንስ ኬስ ስንመጣ መኪናውን ብቻ ነው ፊዚካል ሃዛርድሱን ይለየዋል ቅድም ያልኩት እድሜ የተሰራበት መኪናው ደግሞ ለምንድን ነው ተሰራው የሚሸከመው ለኮመርሻል ነው ለፕራይቬት ነው እንደገና ትልቅ መኪና ነው ትንሽ መኪና ነው ብዙ ነው ለየጭነት ነው የሰው ነው ብዙ ነገሮች እዛ ጋር ይለያሉ ማለት ነው እዛ ጋር የሚሰራውም ስራ ምን አክል ስትሬስ እንዳለው ይለያልና እዛ ውስጥ ይገባል እሱም ይታያል እንደገና መኪና ፊዚካል ኮንዲሽኑ ምን ይመስላል ከእድሜው አኳያ ከአያያዝ አኳያ እንደገና ደግሞ ሌላው ስፔር ፓርት አለው ከተማ ላይ ለማስጠገን አሁንም ደግሞ ሰውየውም ሞራል ሃዛርድስም ሊኖር ይችላል እንግዲህ እንደዚህ መኪናው የተበላሸ ካስቸገረው ቅድም የታለው ነገሮች ላይ ስለሚመጣ ሞራል ሃዛርድስ lead to an intentional accident ስለሚያስከትል እነዚህን በሙሉ ሰውየውም አሴስ ይደረጋል ከመኪናው ከፊዚካል እንትኑ ጋር አያይዘን እናያለን ማለት ነው ይሄ ታይቶ ዋጋም ኢቫሉዌት ይደረጋል ከዛ አይደንቲፋይ ይሄን ላመጣ ይችላል ፊዚካል እንትኖቹ እነኚህ ፓርቶች እነኚህ ነገሮች ካልተስተካከሉ አደጋ ያመጣሉ ተብሎ ይታያሉ ጎማ ለምሳሌ ሊሾ ነው በሄድበት ምሳሌውን ትንሹን ነው የሚገባኝ የሚነግሪ ይሄ ይታያል ሞተር ላይ ያለው ድምጽ ምንድነው ካምቢዮ ላይ ያለው ድምጽ ምንድነው ይሄ ሁሉ ይታይና ከዛ ተነስቶ ይሄ ከታየ በኋላ ቢቁ ነው ለኢንሹራንስ ተብሎ ኢቫሉዌት ይደረጋል ደግሞ ዋጋው መኪናው በአጠቃላይ ምን ያወጣል ዋጋ የሚባለው ምክንያቱም ኢንሹራንስ ሲገባ ያለው ባለው ዋጋ ነው የሚገባ ማርኬቱ ማለት ገብቶ ያ በዛ ፕሪሚየም ካልኩሌት ተደርጎ እንዲከፈል ያደርጋል አንደኛው ነው ሁለተኛው ደግሞ አክሲደንት ካልደረሰበት ያው አልደረሰበት አመቱን ይጨርሳል ከደረሰበት ይመጣል ሲመጣ አክሲደንቱ ከደረሰበት በኋላ ይሰራል ይገመታል ይታያል ምንድነው የሚታየው ሁለት ነገሮች ነው ቅድም ሰበለወንጌል እንዳለችው ምን በአደጋው ተጎድቷል የመኪናው ፓርት የመኪናው አካል ምኑ ተጎድቷል እሱ ተለይቶ ይመዘገባል ተለይቶ ዝርዝሩ ይወጣል ተለይቶ መመዝገብ ብቻ ሳይሆን እነኛ ነገሮችን ለመቀየር ምንድነው የሚፈጀው ዋጋ ያንዳንዱ ማርኬት ነገር አሴስ ተደርጎ ከማርኬቱ ያ ዋጋ ይወጣል በዝርዝር አረታም ሊወጣ ይችላል እንደ ባለሙያም ደግሞ ይሄን ዝርዝር ያወጣና ያያዋል ሳይኦ ለማስጠገን የሆነ 75% የሚባል አለ ሌላ ነገሮች አሉ በኢንሹራንስ እሱን ካለፈ መኪናውን በሙሉ ቶታል ሎስ አድርጎ ቶታል ሙሉ ከፍሎት ከኢንሹራንሱ እንትን እንድል ይደረጋልና እሱ ይሰራል አይም እንደዛ ዋጋው የማይደርስ ከሆነ ለማስጠገን ከሆነ ደግሞ እነዛን የወጡትን ዋጋዎች ኢቫሉዌት ተደርጎ እንደገባ የገባ ዋጋው መኪናው የገባበት ሳይሆን አሁን ደግሞ አሁን ያለውን የገበያ ዋጋ ይጠናና ኢቫሉዌት ይደረጋል ቶታል ሎስ ሙሉም ቢከፈለውም ፓርሻሊም ቢከፈለው ያ ይሰራል የሚሰራበት እንትኖች አሉ እና ሁለት ጊዜ ነው ኢቫሉዌሽኑ የሚሰራና ሁለቱም የራሱ ፐርፐዝ አለው አሁን ያደጋ መነሻው ሌላ ነው እሱም የራሱ ነገሮች አሉ ስራ ግን ሁለተኛውም ለሰውየውም ለኢንሹራንሱም ምን አክል ወጪ ሊያወጣ ይችላል ወዴት ይሄዳል ቶታል ሎስ ይሆናል ወይስ ተጠግኖ ወደ ነበረበት ይመለሳል የሚለውን ውሳኔ ለመስጠት ይሰራሉ እነዚህ ኢቫሉዌሽኖቹ ይሰራሉ ለኢንትኑ ሳይሆን ይሰራል ወደ ነበረበት ከተመለሰ ለኢንሹራንሱ አደጋ ያስከትልም ኢንሹራንሱ ውስጥም ተመልሶ ይቀጥላል ለባለቤቱም ሮድ ወርዝ ሆኖ ይቀጥላል ለማለት ነው ይሄንንም ነው የሚታየው ሁለተኛ ጊዜ እስከ መጨረሻው ተጠግኖ ሲወጣ ምን ይመስላል የሚለው ደግሞ እንደዚህ አሲስት ተደርጎ ይወጣና ለባለ ንብረቱ ይረከባል ወደ ስራ ይገባል ይሄንን ነው የሚመስለው እዛ ኤሪያ ላይ ያለው ለመኪናውም ለሌሎቹም እንደዛ ነው ፕሪቬንቲቭን እንደገና ደግሞ አደጋው ከደረሰ በኋላም ይሄን ስለሚፈልግ ይሄ ስራ ይሰራል ማለት ነው መሳይ
Mr. Deriba, I think you give us a very detailed explanation and I hope Masai you have been satisfied with your response and what I want to say here what I want to add here is what about systematic factors did you consider systematic factors in managing accident risk for Mr. Deriba just your experience what about other systematic risks for example let us assume an insurance buyer who comes from out of Addis and an insurance buyer who live in Addis and do you consider about road facilities technologies and other even driving license did you consider such qualities
እኛ ሀገር እንግዲህ ሁለት ብዙ ችግሮች አሉ አሁን ድራይቪንግ ላይሰንሱን አክቹአሊ ይታያል የሁሉ አደጋ ሲደርስ ነው የሚታየው ድራይቪንግ ላይሰንሱ ግን መጀመሪያ ሲገባ ያው መኪናው ነው ሊብሬው የሚመረመረውና በሊብሬው አማካይነት የሚታየው ግን ሌላ ነገር ምንድነው ስራ ቅድም ያልኩት ነገር አለ መኪናው ላይ ስራው አይነት ይታያል ለፕሪሚየሙም ለሁሉ ነገር ካልኩሌት የሚደረገው ለምን የቤት መኪና ሆኖ ወይንም የድርጅት መኪና ሆኖ ቢሮና ቤት ብቻ የሚመላለስበት መኪናና ሌሎቹ ኤክስፖዝድ መሆን ጅቡቲ ድረስ የሚሄዱ አሉ ትላልቅ መኪኖች ሌሎችም እንደዚህ ከዚህ ውጪ የሚሰሩ አሉ ሚኒባሶች አሉ ለነኚህ ሁሉ የካቴጎሪ ተሰርቷል በኢንሹራንሱ ምክንያቱም ፕሪሚየም ካልኩሌሽኑም በካቴጎሪ ነው አሉ ክላስ አላቸው በዛ ክላስ ነው የሚታዩት ለምን የሚሄዱበትን ሮድ የተለየ ነው የሚሄዱበት ፍጥነት የተለየ ነው ከከተማ ውጪም ከተማ ውስጥ ይሄዳሉ ከተማ ውስጥ ለሚውሉ ለነኚህ ለፕራይቬት እንትኖቹ ኮንሲደር ይደረጋል ፕሪሚየሙ ራሱ በዛ ነው ካቴጎራይዝ ተደርጎ የሚሰራ በተቻለ መጠን ማለት ነው ሙሉ በሙሉ አይሆንም እንጂ ከተማ ውጪም ለሆኑት እንደዚሁ ይታያል ለቤታቸው ምንድነው የምትጠቀሙበት የሚለው ነገርም አሁን ይታያል መኪናው አይነትም ይታያል ምንድነው ጭነን ውጭኑበት ሰው ነው የሚጭኑበት ለኮመርሻል ነው ለራሳቸው ነው ወይንም ደግሞ የራሳቸው ዕቃ ብቻ ነው የሚጭኑበት የሚባለው ነገር በደንብ ይታያልና እነዚህ ነገር በሙሉ ኮንሲደር ተደርጎ ነው ፕሪሚየሙ ካልኩሌሽን ውስጥ የሚገባው የመኪና ኮንዲሽኑም እንዳለ ፊዚካል አዛርደሱ ሞራል አዛርደሱ ከነዚህ ጋር የተያዙ ነገሮች ስለሆኑ እነሱ በደንብ ይታያሉ ሲገባ ማለት ነው
thank you so much Mr. Deriba it was a good presentation and it is a good discussion and I obtained some new understanding about insurance risk so accident risk in Ethiopia and the way you analyze practically
first I would like to just thank Mr. Deriba he tried to just elaborate what on my question but I need your further elaboration because I was confused on this because ቅድም እንዳልኩት የሪስክ አናሊሲስ ኢንሹራንስ ካምፓኒስ ሚስተር ድሪባ ያለው ገብቶኛል ማለት ኢንሹራንስ ካምፓኒዎች ምን ይሰራሉ ከመጀመሪያው ጀምሮ ሪስክ አናሊሲስ ይሰራሉ ግን እኔ ሪስክ አናሊሲስ የገባኝ ለምሳሌ አንድ የመኪና አምራች ሊሆን ይችላል ወይም ደግሞ ሰርቪስ የሚያቀርብ ሰራተኛ በጣም ብዙ መኪኖች ያሉ ድርጅት ቢሆን ሪስክ አናሊሲስ ሲያደርግ ለወደፊት በመኪኖቹ ላይ ሪስክ እንዳይደርስ ምንድነው አናላይዝ ማድረገው እና ሪስክ አናሊሲስ ስንሰራ እያየን ያለ ነው እንዳይደርስ የሚደረግን ሪስክ አናሊሲስ ኦር አክሲደንት ለማስቀረት የሚደረገው ነው ኦር ሃፕን ያደረገውን ኢንሹራንሶች ስፔሲፊካሊ ይሄን ግልጽ ቢሆንልኝ የሚለው ለመጨመር ነው
ምናልባት እዚህ ጋር መሳይ ለመናገር ከዚህ በፊት ያለው የሪስክ ትሮች አሉ የቅድመ ጥናትና ከሪስክ ሃፕን ካደረገ በኋላ ፕሪ ኤንድ አፍተር የሚላቸው ሜቶዶች አሉ በቲዮሬቲካሊ እኛውን እንትኑን የኢንዳስትሪ ኤክስፒሪየንስን ስለማላቀው ነው ለሙሉ ለሚስተር ደሪባ የሰጠሁት ግን ያው ሪስክ በዋናነት አሁን እየተወያየን ያለነው ስለ አክሲደንት ሪስክ ሚስተር ደሪባ የወሰደው ሞተር ሪስክ ነው የወሰደው ወይም ደግሞ የተሽከርካሪ ሪስክ የምንለው የወሰደው የመጀመሪያው ኢንሹራንሶች ሪስክ አናሊሲስ የሚሰሩት ፕሪሚየም ሴት ሲያደርጉ ቀደም የነገርናቸው የማንነው ሚስተር ደሪባ ሜንሽን ያደረጋቸው ብዙ ቴክኒካል ኢሹዎች ይታያሉ በርካታ ቴክኒካል ኢሹዎች እኛ ኢንሹራንስ ደግሞ እንደ አንድ ቢዝነስ የራሱን ሪስክ አፕል ሊያደርግ ይችላል ለምሳሌ ኦቨር ኢንደሚኒፊኬሽን እንዳይገጥመው ኢንሹራንሱን በራሱ አንድ ኮርፖሬት ነው ወይም ደግሞ አንድ ተቋም ደግሞ የራሱ የሆነ ቢዝነስ ሪስክ ይኖራል ራይት የደንበኞች አክሲደንት ሪስክ አፕል ማድረጉ ለኢንሹራንሱ ይዞት የሚመጣው ሪስክ ይኖራል ሪስክ እነሱ ይሄን ማኔጅ የሚያደርጉት early ነው early ፕሪሚየም በሚገዛበት ሰዓት ቲዮሬቲካሊ ማቆም ነው ሞተር ኢንሹራንስ በሚወስድበት ሰዓት ኢንዴፕዝ የሆነ ዲቴል የሆነ አናሊሲስ ከቴክኖሎጂ ጀምሮ ቀደም ያላቸው እያንዳንዱን ቴክኒካል ነገሮች አንስተው ኢቫሉዌት ያደርጋሉ ካለው አክሰስ ጀምሮ ከሆነ በኋላ ደግሞ ኢንደሚኒፊኬሽን ለመስጠት ሌላ ኮንሲደሬሽኖች አሉ ኢንደሚኒፊኬሽን ነው አሁን ወደ ቢዝነስም ወደ ኢንሹራንስ ካምፓኒ ወደ ሌላ ሪስክ ኤክስፖዝ የሚወስደው the way they value ነው ሪስክን ኮምፐንሴት የሚያደርጉበት ወይም ደግሞ ጉዳት የደረሰውን ሰው ኮምፐንሴት የሚያደርገው ሜተድ ተቋሙን ሪስክ ይዞበት ይመጣል ራይት ሪስክ ይዞበት ይመጣል ያንን ሪስክ አናሊሲስ የማድረጉበት የራሳቸው የሆነ ከዚህ በፊት ያየናቸው ስቴፖች ይኖራቸዋል በያስባለሁ ፕራክቲካሊ ያላቀው ቲዮሬቲካሊ ግን የምናቀው ሪስክ አናሊሲስ ቱሎች አሉ አጠቃላይ ከሪስክ ማኔጅመንት ፕሮሰሱ አንዱ ሪስክ አናሊሲስ ነው ሌላው ሪስክ ኮንትሮል ነው ራይት ሪስክ አናሊሲስን የሚሰሩት ቀድመው such types of ፕሮብሌሞች happen ከማድረጋቸው ሰራሉ ከዛ በኋላ ደግሞ ኮንትሮል ያደርጓቸዋል ኮንትሮል ሜካኒዝሞችን ይፈጥራሉ ባለፈው ቻፕተር 1 ያየናቸው ስቴቶች አሉ በዛ ፕሮሰስ ውስጥ የሚያልፍ ይመስለኛል የነሱ ፕራክቲካሊ ግን አንድ ነገር የምረዳው ነገር አለ ቀደም ሚስተር ደሪባ ለመጠየቅ ነበር ሰዓት ሴቭ ለማድረግ ብዬ ነው ሪስክ አናሊሲስ ሜተዳቸው ወይም ደግሞ ሪስክ ሃፕን ከማድረግ በፊት ያለው ወይም ደግሞ ፕሪሚየም ሴት የሚያደርጉበት ሰዓት ያለው የሪስክ አናሊሲስ ሜካኒዝም ስትሬንግዙን ነው ማወቅ ፈልገው ለምሳሌ ያየናቸው ኳሊቴቲቭ እና ኳንቲቲቭ አፕሮቾች አሉ ራይት ያንን ታይፕ እንዴት to what extent strengthful ነው የሚለው ነገር ምክንያቱም ሌላ ሪስክ እንዳያመጣባቸው right I don't know ኢንሹራንስ ካምፓኒዎች ኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ ያሉበት የፋይናንሻል ስታተስ compared to banks is low no and they are risky compared to banks right compared to banks ምናልባት ከዚህ ደሪባ ለትን የሚችለው የመሳይን ጥያቄ ልጨምርልህና አንድ ላይ to what extent the risk analysis mechanism that the insurance company used is effective pre and after the risk happened especially the motor insurance regard to motor insurance particularly
ትንሽ ልጨምር እዚህ ላይ ዶክተር
ምን ያህል ኢፌክቲቭ ነው አሁን
እሺ ብዙ አሁን እንግዲህ እንደሚጠበቀው ኢፌክቲቭ ነው ብዙ ነገር አለው እዚህ ጋር አሁን መሳይ አነሳው ወደ መሳይ ጥያቄ ሊድና ቀጥታ ምንድነው አሁን እኔ ይሄንን ነገር ሚቲጌሽን ምናምን ይሰራሉ ለምሳሌ የፋክተሪ ሊሆን ይችላል ፋክተሪ ውስጥ ወራው ሰዎች ፋክተሪ ሃውስ ብዙ ነገሮች አሉ የሚታዩት እንደዛ ከሄድን ማለት ነው ወደዛ ከሄድን ብዙ ነገሮች ይሰጣሉ ዋራንቲ የሚባሉ ነገሮችም ሁሉ ሊሰጡ ይችላሉ እስከዛ ይሄን ካላስተካከልክ ይሄንን ኢንሹርድ እናደርግም ምክንያቱም ለምሳሌ ኮንሲኩዌንሱን ሚቲጌት የሚያደርግበት አንድ ድርጅት ስፕሪንክለሮችን ካልተከለ እንትኑ ላይ ውሃ በራሱ እሳት ሲመጣ የሚለቀው ማለት ነው እሱ መትከል አለብህ ፋየር ሪስክ አለ ካለ ይተክላል ዋራንቲ ነው የሚባለው ይሄ ዋራንቲ ከተጠቀለ እሱም ካልተከለ ኢንሹራንስ ሙሉ ያገኝ ወይ እሱ ባለመትከሉ ችግሮቹ ከተፈጠረ ሊወጣ የሚችልበት አለ እሱም በደንብ ይታያል ማለት ነው ምክንያቱም ሲገቡ ሁሉ ዝርዝር ይወጣል ህንጻዎችና ህንጻ ማከል አለው ልዩነት ሪስኩን ራስኮ ማክሲመም ፕሮባብል ሎስ ሁሉ ይሰራል ለትላልቆቹ ሪስኮች ለፋክተሪ አንድ ግቢ ውስጥ ብዙ ህንጻዎች ሊኖሩ ይችላል አንድ ፋክተሪ እሱ ምን አክል ይራራቃሉ አንዱን አፌክት ያደርጋል ወይ ሪስክ እዚህ ጋር የደረሰው ሪስክ ምን አክል ይመጣል አንድ ሪስክ የንን ሁሉ አባላሻል ምን አክል ነው የሚሄደው የሚለው ነገር በሙሉ ይታያል ማስተካከል አለባቸው ነገሮች ካሉም ደግሞ እንዲያስተካክል ለባለቤቱ ይጻፋል ሪኮሜንዴሽን ተጽፎ በዛ ይስተካከላልና እንደገና የሞተርም እንግዲህ ለያ ኢንዲቪጁዋል ስለሚሆኑ ነው ኢንዲቪጁዋል ኦን እንትን የሚሰሩ እንጂ በብዛት ከሆኑ ማንገል ላይ እኛ ምረዳቸዋለን እስከ ድርጅቶች ከሆኑና 50 ፍሊት ካላቸው እዛ ፍሊት ላይ ቅድም ያልኳቸውን ነገሮች ስለ ሜንቴናንስም ስለምንም ልረዳቸው እንችላለን ባለሙያዎች አሉበት ትሬኒንግ እንሰጣለን ፋየር እንዴት ይነሳል መኪኖች ላይ አደጋ እንዴት ይደርሳል ሜንቴናንስ ቢታረጉ እንደዚህ ይቀንሳል እንትላችሁም በሙሉ ይሄንን ቢሰሩ ለሹፌሮች ትሬኒንግ ቢሰጡ ትሬኒንግ እንዴት ይሰጣል ትሬኒንግም እኛም ልንሰጥ እንችላለን እንግዲህ አንድ ሪስክ ማኔጅመንት ዲፓርትመንት አለ ወይንም በሌላም ዲፓርትመንት ይሰጣል በክሌምም ቢሆን ተሰጥቶ ያንን ነገር እንዴት ይቀንሳሉ የሚለው ነገር አሁን አንተ የምትለውን ይሰራል ማለት ነው እዚህ ኤሪያ ላይ እና ብዙ ነገሮች ናቸው አሉትና በዚህ ኢቭን ሪስክ አይደንቲፋይ ስናደርግ ምን አክል አንድ ግቢ ውስጥ እሳት ቃጠሎ ቢነሳ ምን አክል ንብረት ይጠፋል ብለን ሰፓሬት እናደርገዋለን ሪስክ ወይንም ሁሉንም ያጠፋል ካለ ደግሞ አንድ ሪስክ ነው ብለን ወይንም አንድ ግቢ ውስጥ አንድ ሰውዬ 3 እና 4 ሪስክ ነው ብለን ይሄን ሁሉ ታይቶ ነው የሚመጣና ብዙ ነገሮች አሉና ያንንም መርዳት አለ በተቻለ ሪስክ ማኔጅመንቱም ለማለት ፈልጌ ነው
እሺ ቴንክ ዩ መሳይ ምናልባት ቅድም ያነሳው ጥያቄ ማኔ እንግሊዝ አድርጌ ለማለት እንፈልገው የተወያየን ያለነው ሪስክ አናሊሲስ ፎር አክሲደንት ሪስክ ማለት አክሲደንት ሪስክ ነው ሶ እነ ድሪባ ካነሱት ከሞተር which እኛ ራሱ ኢንዲቪጁዋል እኛ አሁን ለምሳሌ we are best risk analyst and best risk managers because we still can alive አደም ወደ ቤት እኔ አሁን ከዚህ ወደ ስራ ስመጣ ጥሩ ሪስክ አናሊስት ካልሆንኩኝ የመሞት እድሌ ጉዳት የመድረስ እድሉ ከፍተኛ ነው ራይት ሪስክ አናሊሲስ የምንለው የመጀመሪያው ሪስክ አናሊሲስ የመጀመሪያው ስታርታፕ ምን አይነት አደጋ ይገጥመኛል ነው አክሲደንት ሪስክ ላይ እኔ ከቤት ስወጣ ምን ሊገጥመኝ እንደሚችል ኮንሺየስሊ ዝም ብዬ መንገድ አላቋርጥ ማለት ኢንዲቪጁዋል ምን አይነት ሪስክ ሊገጥመኝ ይችላል ለምሳሌ ሊገጥመን ሪስክ car accident ከሆነ we identify what types of risk will happen የመጀመሪያው ስቴፕ ይሄ ነው የመጀመሪያው ነገር we have to be ready in the risk analysis there must be analyst as individual we are risk analyst for our life በላይፋችን risk analyst ነን እንደ individual right then we are going to identify what types of risk to happen ከቤት ስወጣ ምን አይነት ሪስክ ይገጥመኛል የሚል አናሊሲስ አድርገን ይላል So car accident, let's take, we identify the types of car accidents. The next step is how to manage that risk. ያንን risk እንዴት ነው happen ከማድረጉ በፊት identify የምናደርገው ነው እሱ በተቋም ደረጃ ስለሰሩት ነው right ወደ ተቋም ስመጣ ሌላ ኬዝ ነው ቅድም እንዳልኩት ስለዚህ we identify the risk then we are going to the way mechanisms how the risk shouldn't happen እንዳያደርግ identify ማድረግ right identify ማድረግ ከተቋም ደረጃ ስንሄድ ግን በኢንሹራንስ ፐርስፔክቲቭ ሪስኩ ብዙ ነው ቀደም እንዳልኩ ሪስኩ ብዙ ነው ለምሳሌ ኢንሹራንስ ብዙ አይነት ኢንሹራንሶች ይሰጣል ጀነራሊ ላይፍ እና ነን ላይፍ የሚባል ኢንሹራንስ ላይ እንከፍላቸዋለን right ስለዚህ ከነዛ ውስጥ ምንድነው እንደ ቢዝነስ they will supposed to face risk ኢንሹራንስ ካምፓኒዎች እንደምስ ሪስክ ፌስ ያደርጋሉ የመጀመሪያው the cause of risk is it starts when they decide to ሪስክን ይሄ ለምሳሌ ሞተር ኢንሹራንስ መሸጥ ሲፈልጉ ኢንሹራንስ መሸጥ ሲፈልጉ this is the point where the risk happen right the point where the risk happen ይሄ ከዚህ ጋር በተያያዘ የሚመጡ ሪስኮችን ቀደም ሚስተር ደሪባ ባለው ፕሮሲጀር ሞር ቴክኒካል በሆነ መንገድ ማኔጅ ያደርጋል right more technical manage ያደርጋል now once the risk happen the accident happen and the insurance is going to indemnify the insurer there will be another risk ሌላ ሪስክ ሊፈጠር ይችላል ለምሳሌ ፕሪሚየም የሚከፍሉት ባደጋው ልክ ነው ሰፖዝ የሚደረገው በላይ ልክ ነው the higher premium የሚያስከፍሉ ከሆነ ያ ሪስክ ወይም ደግሞ ያ ፕሪሚየም ይዞት የሚመጣው ሪስክ ከፍተኛ ነው ማለት ነው ከዛ በኋላ ያለውን ነገር ከዚህ በኋላ የሚፈጠሩ ሪስኮች እንደ ቢዝነስ ሪስክ ነው ኮንሲደር የምናደርጋቸው ቢዝነስ ሪስክን ማኔጅ የምናደርግበት ሜቶድ ቻፕተር 1 ላይ ያየናቸው ስቴፖች ናቸው ዘው ኢንታየር ስቴፖች ራይት ስትራክቸር ላይ የተቀመጡት መሳይ አልተረዳህም So we do have 7 minutes. I'm going to see some of the items left in chapter 3. So it is my turn to share my slide. So yesterday we already started chapter 3, which was about risk and risk analysis. And we have seen some of the guiding principles, the step involved in risk analysis. And we try to see examples from the perspective of business, from investing in the stock market, and other issues. Today we are going to see other risk analysis practice using projected cash flow analysis, right? Using projected cash flow analysis. So this is maybe the fourth example, how to practically make risk analysis. Now this is a finance term, which is, it is all about how to deal with project risk, right? Project risk. There are different means to deal with project risk, and one of the most common practice is the use of project discount cash flow analysis. We will see how discounted cash flow analysis can be applied in risk analysis concepts, especially from the perspective of the 4 unifying principles, right? The 4 unifying principles. So at the beginning, we can say in the selection and management of project, we often use net present value of the cash flow from the project. We determine or we measure the net present value of the project performance over the period, which means determining the expected value of the project today. Net present value means we have a certain future cash flow, let us assume for the next 20 years, and in order to evaluate, to select or not to select a given project, we will compute net present value, the value of future cash flows today, right? Today, which is the most common performance measure of projects, right? Projects. So now to measure net present value of a project, the most important information that we had on hand, what we need is we should have estimated cash flows, right? Project cash flows must be specified in order to compute the net present value. And we should know the present or time value of this cash flow, taking into account discounting future cash flows. Discounting future cash flows means it is computing the value of future money or future cash flows using required rate of return, Required rate of return means a return we expect from investment, which is given in terms of rate or in terms of percentage. So consider here, we must have at least two things. One, the cash flow, and the other, we should expect the required rate of return from the project. How much return we expect from the project, right? So we represent cash flow by XT and required rate of return by R, so that using this formula, we can compute net present value of a project. That is a summation of Xi, Xt divided by 1 plus R. Xt means cash flow. Cash flow year 1, cash flow year 2, cash flow year 3, future, right? The cash flow should be predicted based on historical data or prior experiences, right? Prior experience for the same project. So cash flow of year 1 divided by 1 plus R means required return. The return we expect from the project. Maybe 10%, 12%, or like that. It should be greater than risk-free rate. So the time is an important. For how many years the project will provide cash flow. Using this formula, we can compute the present value of a project. ለምሳሌ ፕሮጀክቱ 20 ዓመት የሚቆይ ከሆነ የ20 ዓመት ካሽ ፍሎ ዳታ ያስፈልገናል። በየዓመቱ ካሽ ፍሎ ያስፈልገናል። ይሄ አር ፊክስድ ነው። Required rate of return fixed ነው። ዲተርማይን የሚደረገው at the beginning ነው። How to determine this R we will see later. And this is power of t. We use time. If it is 20 years, we have to put 10 years so that we can determine because የ20 ዓመት በኋላ የሚኖረውን value we can compute the value today. Based on this value, we can decide to implement or not to implement a given project, right? A given projects. So sometimes we use different name for required rate of return. For example, you can say capital cost or alternative cost are also used interchangeably for the term required rate of return. Or sometimes you call it market return. So this required rate of return has different name. Market return, required rate of return, capital cost, or alternative cost. They have the same meaning, right? The same meaning. Now, generally required rate of return or market rate, or we can say capital gain. This is investors' cost related to not employing the capital in alternative investment. R ማለት it is the cost to the investor because he did not consider other alternative investments. Assume we have 3 alternative investments. Alternative A, alternative B, alternative C. So we decide to invest on alternative A. When we decide to invest on alternative A, we do have cost related with not to invest on B and C, right? B and C. Therefore, that rate is considered required rate of return, right? Required rate of return. Now, when considering project where the cash flow are known, cash flow known, usually the cash flow is unknown, right? The cash flow is unknown. But if there is a situation to know the cash flows in advance, the rate of return associated with other risk-free investments can be considered, like that of bank deposit, in investment on treasury bills. They can consider to be, the rate can be considered such risk-free investments in calculating net present values, or when we decide the discount rate or required rate of return for the project. Now we should focus on a situation where cash flow is uncertain, right? In this case, we don't care about. When cash flow are certain, we do not have any uncertainties that leads to a risk. But the problem, the concept of risk happen when the cash flow is unknown, which is often to happen, right? Often to happen. In such case, when the cash flow of a given project is unknown or is known with uncertainty, So we do have different approaches to deal with it, right? To deal with it. Now assume we have project A and we estimate the cash flow, but our estimation is uncertain. In such condition, we do have 3 alternatives or approaches to deal with. The first thing, represent the cash flow by their mean values, which means we have to compute the mean value of cash flows, or we can say the mean value of the average of cash flow over the project lifetime, and increase the required rate of return R, so as to limit or so as to minimize the possible unfavorable outcomes. You see here, our cash flow is uncertain. So the first thing is what? We have to determine the mean value of expected cash flow. Mean value, not the cash flow of each period. So we are going to use the mean value. Mean value means average value. So because the average value, to achieve the average value is not certain, we have to increase the rate, the discount rate or required rate of return. Why? Because there is uncertainties. We should have some means to minimize the risk or unfavorable outcomes. This is option 1, approach 1, to deal with a project with uncertain cash flow. Second, we have to express or set uncertainty related to cash flows. Express uncertainty with related cash flows, which means we have to assign what? When there is uncertainty, it is non-measurable, and to make the uncertainty certain, we have to use probabilities distribution, right? As we have seen yesterday. So express uncertainty related to cash flow and what? Apply what? Risk-free discount rate. Risk-free discount rate means this is, in such case, there is no risk at all, like that of interest rate presented in Treasury B, right? The government Treasury interest rate, which is risk-free rate now, right? So we use a risk-free discount rate in order to predict the cash flows, right? The cash flows. And we have to assign probability for the uncertainty, which means in this case, we have to bring the concept of risk analysis into what? The classical approach, right? The classical approach. The third one, combine the first 2 items, approach 1 and approach 2. Then, how to combine? First, express uncertainty in cash flow and use what? Discounted, risk-free discount rates. እዚህ ላይ እዚህኛው ኬዝ ላይ ምንድነው uncertainty ሁለተኛው እንወስዳለን and cash flow and use discount with risk adjusted rate of return. Risk adjusted rate of return means here required rate of return. Required rate of return በውስጡ ምን ያዘ ነው? ለምሳሌ risk free rate 5% ከሆነ required rate of return ወይም ደግሞ risk adjusted rate of return must be greater than 5. ለምሳሌ 8 ልናደርገው እንችላለን 3% 8 minus 3% will be used to adjust the risk, right? To adjust the risk. So we took the required rate of return from the approach 1 and expressing uncertainty to the cash flow from the step 2. Then we can quantitatively deal with how to manage, how to deal with risk using discounted cash flow analysis. Well, now, when we deal about project cash flow, we must care about the type of risk which has been discussed at the beginning of chapter 2. That is, we have to identify systematic and unsystematic risk. In this case, we focus on systematic risk, right? We focus on systematic risk. We already defined what systematic risk at the beginning of chapter 2. So to remember, systematic risk or market risk or non-diversified risk is a kind of uncertainty in factors affecting the cash flows that are also related to other activities in the market, such as energy price, raw material price, and political situation. This is a kind of risk which affects other business too. or which affect the industry as a whole or the market as a whole. And this is a kind of risk that we cannot diversify it. And when it comes to here, non-systematic risk, it is a kind of risk or uncertainty about the factors that solely affect the specific project and one project which affects the other. For example, operational delay, accidental events, dependency on a critical person, production rate or specific oil well, and demand for the raw material, niche products, and one project which affect the well. So in the discount cash flow analysis, we use systematic risk as the main focus in the study of project feasibility or profitability. በብዛት focus የምናደርገው systematic risk line, right? Example, this making in the net present value analysis for a project, because the impact of non-systematic risk to the value of the investor's portfolio can be more or less eliminated by diversifications. ለሆነ ነገር መጠቀም diversify ማድረግ ስለምንችል ነው። ያኛውን systematic risk we cannot diversify it. So we have to care about the systematic risk. Now let us use the practical application of the three alternatives we have seen. The first alternative, let me see how we can apply the risk analysis using discounted cash flow analysis under alternative 1. That is, using cash flow, the mean value of cash flows, and increase the required rate of return. Triple R means here required rate of return, or we can say simply R. Or this is a risk market adjusted risk, right? Market adjusted risk is a standard procedure. በብዛት የምንጠቀመው a standard procedure and net present value calculation of a certain project. አንደኛው approach እጅግ በጣም የተለመደ ወይም ደግሞ common procedure ነው የምንጠቀመው. We compute the mean value of cash flows and we increase the required rate of return. Then we compute, we are going to decide using comparing net present value with the project cost, right? The project cost. Now let us bring to this case into another model also called as a capital asset pricing model, CAPL, right? I don't know whether you know this approach or not. This model is a very known model in economics and finance studies, right? Finance studies. Or we can say the most important model in dealing with risk and return, right? Risk and return. So the application of approach 1 means it is by default the application of capital asset pricing model. Capital asset pricing model assume that the price of security is adjusted to reflect the risk. Means, let's say we have product A and it has price of 10, assume 10 birr, Ethiopian birr. So according to capital asset pricing model, price 10 includes the risk. Assume price is adjusted to, or any price is risk adjusted. ማንኛውም price risk consider ያደረገ ነው የሚል assumption ያለው. So that based on this assumption, we can expect return by using this formula, right? This is expected return, right? This is return. We can say this is the return. In this case, according to capital asset, this is actually this formula we call it capital asset pricing model. Formula, capital asset pricing model. Now, so in this case, we expect return from the project. This is A into RI. This is return means it is the sum of dividend and capital gain. ከሆነ ኢንቨስትመንት የምናገኘው ዲቪደንድ እና capital gain. Capital gain is the gain from the price of stock, right? The price of stock. Equal to RF means risk-free rate, which is taken from treasury bill in our concept. This is a rate with no risk, which means any amount invested in the market is free of risk at a certain percentage, right? A certain percentage. እኛ ሀገር ውስጥ risk rate is about between less than 5% ነው ለዚህ ማንኛውም ኢንቨስትመንት እስከ 5% return አለው ነው assumption you can find risk free rate or risk free discount rate from government treasury bill and that is the beta as a measure of risk, right? This is a beta or a measure of risk. And here is RM is return from the market return, minus the risk-free rate as it's going, right? So use this formula, we call it capital asset pricing model. In the we can expect return means dividend plus capital gain equal to risk rate plus beta. We will discuss about what beta means. And times return from the market. Return from the market means in terms of rate, that is R, required rate of return, minus risk-free rate. Now, beta is a measure of systematic risk. In the formula we have seen, the capital asset pricing model, the formula, the beta represents a measure of systematic risk associated with an activity of the company R. And beta can be determined or can be calculated using this formula. Beta equal to the covariance of investment I and investment X, XI, XM, divided by the variance of market return or market value equal to, we can say, the correlation coefficient between security I and a standard deviation of investment I divided by standard deviation of investment I. Using this formula, we can compute the beta, that is a measure of systematic risk. So in this case, we can say beta is determined by the covariance between the value of company, XI, and the market relative to the total variance, which means covariance between the value of company, that is investment in X, and the market of that investment, market divided by the variance in the market, right? The variance in the market. So, or you can use this where this one is the correlation coefficient between security I and the market, and J is the standard deviation of XI, standard deviation, and the standard deviation of M is the standard deviation of XM, which means X, which means the value of the company or the project times market value, right? Times market value. So we can say that the higher systematic risk related to the security, the higher the expected return required by the investor. So the higher the beta, we expect the higher R, required rate of return. The beta value is usually determined based on historical data. Beta is not determined. Beta is often based on historical data from similar project or from industries to the project belongs, right? Sometimes, beta will be given we have to based on historical data or industry experience, right? Industry experience. Now, the greater systematic risk associated with the company's activity, the higher the discount rate. Discount rate means R, right? Market adjusted rate or discount rate or cost of capital, like that. Different name, right? Different name. So this corresponds to the principle of risk aversion. A risk aversion person always demand higher return, right? A risk aversion person or a risk aversion business, they always expect higher demand or higher return from their investment. So high discount rates imply greater reducing effect on the value of cash flows. Very important. Cash flow imports calculation cash flow divided by 1 plus R. So there is R future cash flow implication using the formula. So the cash flow which are the most distant are often the most uncertain. And you know that cash flow, cash flow na, የዛሬ 15 ዓመት የሚኖር ካሽ ፍሎ ሰርቴኒቲ እኩል አይደለም right so all investors are risk averse is one of the assumption of underplaying the capital asset pricing model capital asset pricing model assume የሚያደርገው investors are risk averse ናቸው right risk averse which means they require they demand higher return right? They demand return so in order to save time we should be fast so the second approach is as ሁለተኛው አማራጭ ምንድነው we have to set uncertainty and uncertainty about cash flow and using risk-free rate right risk-free rate in order to determine the value of the project today right the future value of the project right the future value of the project so in this approach the most applicable procedure is the use of scenario analysis and simulation analysis especially Monte Carlo simulation analysis is used right is used so how do you make scenario analysis as a second approach የሁለተኛው አማራጭ uncertainty fix ካደረግን በኋላ risk rate የምን apply ስናደርግ እነዚህን በምናደርግበት ሰዓት we do have different approach within this second approach so the first one is we use scenario analysis so usually we do have 3 scenarios to analyze a given project one pessimistics which means the lowest return if the project has lowest returns pessimistic approach or tense scenario second one is the most probably ይሄ ሊሆን ይችላል and the other one is optimistics in common word we can say the smallest return the average return and the maximum return we expect optimistic means just if the project is a maximum successful right successful so in scenario analysis especially for project related analysis or project related issues we use pessimistic one scenario one most probable likely the most probable or most likely to happen and the other one is optimistic the maximum we expect right so probabilities are assigned I told you before if we fix the uncertainty we have to assign probabilities right we have to assign probabilities probability the project in pessimistic scenario and we have to give probability for most probable and give probability for optimistic approach maybe we'll give 10% for optimistic most probably maybe 60% and the remaining 20% may be optimistic just we have to assign probability for the 3 scenarios right to reflect the uncertainty regarding with scenarios right scenarios so based on this assigned probability we can weight net present values right net present values and በመጠቀም net present value calculate ማድረግ ይቻላል we use the same formula the other one is Monte Carlo simulation yesterday I told you that this is the most complex and the most expensive approach to deal with risk under uncertainty. Monte Carlo estimation, extensive description of uncertainties by probabilities as one approach to use. And in Monte Carlo simulation, the profit of a project may depend on vast number of different quantities. The project cash flow and project profit determining different quantities and in such the simulation the uncertainties related to this quantities can be taken into account here Monte Carlo estimations በጥቂቱ ነው የምናየው because it is more of statistics and econometrics so we will see in chapter 5 in detail anyways for the time now in second approach where uncertainty and risk rate used as a risk analysis for a project we can use scenario analysis and Monte Carlo estimation. So the third approach is use a combination of the first and the second. From the second approach, we took what? Assigning uncertainties, which means we fix uncertainty for cash flow. That means we have to give probability. And from the first approach, we have to use risk-adjusted discount rate instead of using risk-free rate in the second approach, right? In second approach. So in this approach, remember that we have to use uncertainty assignment. And for the uncertainty, we have to give probability. And instead of using risk-free rate, we have to use the risk-adjusted discount rate, or the so-called required rate of return, right? Required rate of return. So in most cases, under the three approaches, R is represented by a single number, right? In a single number. Mostly we use R, the market rate, right, or discount rate, as the same number in both approaches. Some analysis, however, choose to express R required rate of by probability distribution. This is a new issue in the third approach. So instead of fixing R as a percentage or a rate, we use probabilistic distributions. In fact, this is at most scenario, which means in a rare situation. And so that the use of probability distribution will reflect the range of numbers that might to apply, depending on the relative weight of various arguments involved in the assessment of proper R. So probability distribution is a different scenario now for R, scenario R. Scenario A, scenario B, scenario C, we will have a different R. And the R is determined based on probability, right? Based on probability. So for scenario analysis and simulation, the risk-free discount rate should be used in the second approach as a risk aspect of net present value, as summarized in generation distributions. We have seen already how to compute net present values, right? So the uncertainty should be accounted for the second time, should not be accounted for a second time, because we already determined uncertainties on step 2, right? Or approach 2. So uncertainty should not be accounted for the second time by using the risk-adjusted discount rate. So if the net present value is once calculated using appropriate risk-adjusted discount rate, the R, and if further adjustment for risk is double counting, right? Already risk rate, first measurement approach like we already calculate, we already determine net present value using R, which is risk adjusted. We don't need to assign probabilities or we don't need to assign uncertainties in this state and in the third step, right? In the third step. So if risk-free rate of interest is used instead, then one obtain the distribution of what the project value will be tomorrow. If all uncertainties about the project cash flow were resolved between today and tomorrow, right? Between today and tomorrow. Now, in general, instead of using probability distribution for net present value, the most common and simple approach is to report the mean value. ቅድም የተጠቀምነው እንደገና R አለ required rate of አለ required rate of determine ካደረግን ወደ uncertainty ገብተን ሌላ complication ከምናመጣ the easiest way is to report the mean, right? Mean value of net present value, and or measure the speed, or we can say standard deviations or the variance or standard deviations. So the use of mean for net present value or variance of the net present value of different project. And the standard deviation, in fact, standard deviation is the square root of variance and the coefficient of variation of standard deviations, or specific quantile distributions might be easy to apply project discount capital analysis for the purpose of risk analysis, right? For the project risk analysis. So any spread means just as an indicator of risk measures, right? Risk measures. Now, in concept method, let's take how project discounted cash flow used for risk analysis under the 4 principles that we have discussed yesterday. Observable quantities. Observable quantities should be predictable. We have to determine uncertainties, and for the uncertainty we have to give probabilities. And finally, the 4th principle is just there should be a model, right? Should be a model. ቅድም እስካሁን ያየናቸው ኮንሰፕቶች ናቸው። እነዚህን በመጠቀም how we can apply the 4 principles in using discount cash analysis for the purpose of risk analysis or risk analysis. So if you remember, the first way to deal with risk analysis under the unifying principle is we use predictive approach. And predictive approach, we use the mean values and probabilities, right? Mean values and predictive values. We use the mean value and the probability distributions give all for distributions of risk related to a cash flow. ትናንትና ስንማር predictive approach የሚጠቀመው mean value እና probability, right? Mean value እና probability. So for a given discount rate R, the performance measure net present value can also be observable. It means net present value, the value of a project or a performance measurement of an activity. Observable ነው ብለን አስብ ማድረግ ይቻላል። ምክንያቱም we have to start the performance measure for risk analysis under the unifying principle. The value should be observable, right? The value should be observable. So thus the profitability of a project may be expressed by probability distribution. This is the third principle. Net present value የመጀመሪያው observable ነው ካልን ደግሞ it can be expressed in terms of probability distribution, right? Probability distributions. Then risk in this setting means, as we have seen at the beginning of this chapter, the risk we define, it is a way or a means of expressing probability distributions. Probability assign ማድረግ ከቻልን the net present value, we can apply discount cash flow for risk analysis. Because for project to evaluate, we use net present value. And this net present value is both observable and we can assign probabilities. Then this approach, the discount cash flow analysis, can apply for risk analysis under the unifying principles, right? Under the unifying principles. So at the end, we can make a sharp distinction between risk, right? And risk measures on the one hand, and we can forward decision rules based on the risk and risk measures on the other hand. The project and the normal condition, project cash flow በመጠቀም project ላይ decide የምናደርገው using net present value. አሁን ግን the concept of net present value ምንድነው? በunifying principle ወደ risk analysis change አድርገናል። ስለዚህ we can make as a risk analysis tools. One of purpose discounted cash analysis can be applied as a risk analysis mechanism. ምክንያቱም discounted cash analysis is often used as project evaluation purpose, right? Project evaluation purpose. So to wind that this section, if we fix the discount rate, once we know the discount rate as a risk adjusted rate, to compute the expected net present value and select the project or the having the highest net present values, then we can make forward decision rules. A project with high net present value, right, would be selected compared to the other, right, compared to the others. So we can say all the three approach 1, approach 2, and approach 3. Procedure for net present value discussed can be included in predictive approach. The predictive approach we can use this approach, right? We can use this approach. So the next part is about accident risk. The time is already over. We go be 10 minutes from what we have. ስለዚህ ይሄን አክሲደንት ሪስክ አናሊሲስ አፕላይ ማድረግ የምንጀምረው ቀሪዎች 4 ተማሪዎች ዲፌንስ ካደረጉ በኋላ ስለሆነ መቼ እንደሚያደርጉን ነገርና የዛሬው ክላስ እንጨርስ። ሰዓታችሁን ተሻምቻለሁ። እሺ እግዚአብሔር ያክብርልኝ። መልካም ቀን።
መልካም ቀን። አመሰግናለሁ። እሺ ቻው።
ልዩነት መፍጠር ዓላማችን ነው። ዓለም አቀፍ ተወዳዳሪ መሆን አለባችሁ። የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ ጥራትና ደረጃውን የጠበቀ ስልጠና በመስጠት ብቁ ዜጋ ያፈራን ነው። በፍላይት ኦፕሬሽን፣ በበረራ መስተንግዶ፣ በቲኬቲንግና ሪዘርቬሽን፣ በሆቴልና ቱሪዝም ሙያዎች አሰልጥነን ተወዳዳሪ እናደርጉታለን። ኮሌጃችን ካናዳ ከሚገኘው ኢንተርናሽናል ኤር ትራንስፖርት አሶሲዬሽን አያታና ከእንግሊዙ ICM ጋር በመተባበር ዓለም አቀፍ ዕውቅና ያለው ስልጠና እየሰጠ ይገኛል። በፍላይት ኦፕሬሽን በበረራ መስተንግዶ የምንሰጣቸው ስልጠና ከኢትዮጵያ ሲቪል አቪዬሽን ባለስልጣን ሙሉ ዕውቅና አለው። አድራሻ ከጎላጉል ታወር 22 አደባባይ ወደ ሾላ በሚወስደው መንገድ ላይ የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ ህልሞን